Imagine having a coding partner who knows more languages than you, who knows the documentation inside and out, who fully understands your code base, who is willing to do all of the grunt work like setting up, testing, and writing all of the unit tests. And when your code passes code review with flying colors, they are going to give you all of the credit. That is what coding with GitHub Copilot is like. If you haven't used GitHub Copilot before, well, you've come to the right place. If you give me just a few minutes of your time, I'm going to make you very, very dangerous with this tooling. And I would go so far as to say that I'm going to increase your productivity as a developer by 2, 3, maybe even 4-fold. In this very, very quick tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up GitHub Copilot and the GitHub Copilot Chat agent. I'm going to show you how to bootstrap a brand new project using GitHub Copilot. I'm going to show you how to get GitHub Copilot to write code for you, how you can get it to set up tests, how it can fix bugs. And by the end of this tutorial, you will be able to double, triple, maybe even quadruple your productivity as a developer. So there are a couple of prerequisites for using GitHub Copilot, but the barriers to entry are minimal. The very first thing you need is a GitHub account, because the first time you connect to GitHub Copilot from your IDE, it's going to ask you to sign into GitHub. So that's the first thing you need at the ready. Get your GitHub account set up and know what your username and password is. The next thing you need is a supported IDE. I'm going to be using VS Code, Visual Studio Code here, but the whole suite of JetBrains products works as well. You can use NeoVim, and surely other products will be coming online in the very, very near future. Regardless of what IDE you're using, in order to use GitHub Copilot, you're going to have to install the appropriate extension or plugin or whatever the vendor calls it. I've got VS Code right here, and I'm going to look on the extensions tab and type in GitHub Copilot, and you'll notice that a bunch of different options come in. There's GitHub Copilot and GitHub Copilot Chat. I'm just going to install GitHub Copilot. You notice that GitHub Copilot Chat gets installed as well. It only takes a second to do. Once that's done, you can come over into your VS Code project and start using GitHub Copilot and GitHub Copilot edits. As you can see, I've got a completely blank workspace here, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually build a simple HTML and JavaScript program that maybe even implements a calculator. That's a common application that we use to demonstrate how GitHub Copilot works. But I want GitHub Copilot to do all the work for me. So how do you do that? The first thing you do is you just go to the search window and type in GitHub Copilot. And it'll say, hey, okay, we will open up that GitHub Copilot window for you. And there it is there. Now, I'm actually going to go to GitHub Copilot Edits. Now, by the way, if this is your first time using the tool, you will be asked to log in and authorize the program. As you can see, I've already logged into my GitHub account, and it says Cameron MCNZ right there. I'm going to click on GitHub Copilot Edits. A couple of things to check on. Which LLM are we using? Notice you've got O3 Mini as an option, Cloud 3.5 Gemini, or GPT-4. I'm going to keep it at GPT-4 right here. Then I'm going to ask the tool to, well, just create a new HTML and JavaScript project that uses an industry standard file and folder structure and supports the Node package manager. Should be easy enough, right? And so now over on the left-hand side, you'll see the environment start to get populated with files. On the right-hand side, Copilot Edit tells us what it's about to do. On the left-hand side, everything gets populated over here. It only takes a second to do. We can click on this blue button here, the up arrow, and take a look at all of the changes that are available. We can click the keep button to save them. I'm going to click this file, save all button, and I'm even going to go into the workspace here and take a look at the index.html file that was created. I'm going to double click on that, and you'll notice that it's actually created a simple hello world file for us using HTML and maybe even a little bit of JavaScript there. And all of a sudden we are getting started with GitHub Copilot development. You can also notice there's that package.json there. That's used for applications that use the Node package manager. So this is actually setting us up to help with some external libraries and maybe even some testing frameworks as well. So that is how easy it is to just get started with GitHub Copilot, and specifically GitHub Copilot edits, and have it create a whole project for you. Now, the next thing we're going to do is make this responsive by adding in a little bit of Bootstrap magic. Now, this website isn't that impressive right now, but why don't we up our game? Why don't we make this a responsive application, one that will change depending on whether it's in a mobile device or a desktop device? The best framework for doing that is Bootstrap. So why don't we say, hey, why don't we add support for Bootstrap.js and create a responsive, right-aligned nav bar that links to Twitter. Are we allowed to link to Twitter X these days? Blue Sky. That's the one that everyone in the tech industry has shifted to, and YouTube as well. Okay, why don't we give it that instruction? It's going to take a look at that. It's going to say, hey, to add Bootstrap CSS and JavaScript and create a responsive right-aligned nav bar that links to Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube. It's going to figure that out, and it's actually going to update our code for us. Now, by the way, if you aren't subscribed to my YouTube account, you should subscribe right now. Also, I'm Cameron MCNZ on Twitter, or X as the kids call it, and also I am CameronMcKenzie.com on Blue Sky, so check me out over there. Now, it'll take a look at this, applying edits 95%, and after a little thinking, it updates the code. So I'm going to click keep on everything. I'm also going to click the file, save all, to make sure that everything is changed. I'm going to take a look at this index.html file, and notice this index.html file, it's now linking to Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube, doing some interesting stuff. And let me bring up my project over here. I'll click refresh. There we go. We've now got a nav bar in here, my project, Hello World. There's Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Now I asked it to be responsive, to be one of those programs that changes the way it looks if it's small screen. So let's pretend that we've got a desktop or a mobile application. And notice that nav bar is now responsive. It responds differently to a small screen than it does with a large screen. So I think that's pretty cool. We've now made this application responsive, something that we didn't have before. Okay, I'm doing just a very quick interruption here. A couple of things. The YouTube algorithm hates me for some reason right now. If you're enjoying this video, if you could like, subscribe, and even leave a comment, I would really love to hear from you and find out if you've enjoyed this. It'll also help wake up the YouTube algorithm and maybe give my channel and my videos a little bit more exposure. So I would really appreciate that. The other thing too is I got a new copy of Hibernate Made Easy coming out, the best-selling book. I've updated it for version 7 of Hibernate. So if you're into JPA, Spring Data, Spring JDBC, please sign up for my mailing list. You don't have to buy it, but I'll be raffling off some free copies for members of my newsletter. And I'll also be making chapters available through the newsletter as well. So sign up for that. There's a link in the description. And finally, I helped out with some final edits on Darcy DeClute Scrum Master Certification Guide. So if you're agile and you're working with Scrum and you're interested in getting Scrum Master certified, a lot of people have been using this book to score 100% on the Product Owner and Scrum Master exam. So it's available on Amazon. Go pick that up. I know Darcy would be very happy if you did. Okay, that's it. I'm really sorry to bother you. Let's get back into the coding. Now, so far we've been using GitHub Copilot edit. Why don't we click on chat? If you click on chat and then just say /help, it'll give you all of the different commands that you can use to take a look at your workspace. And specifically, we've got explain, test, fix, new notebook, fix, test, failure, and set up tests. I want to actually try that explained. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this div here that has all of the links in it, and I'm going to say, hey, go to that workspace and look at what's highlighted and explain to me what the heck is going on there. So I'll click enter, and all of a sudden it'll say, hey, the provided HTML code snippet represents a section of a nav bar, specifically the collapsible part of the nav bar, and it explains how all of that works. Now, looking at that, that is just the generic Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube. What I like to do is I actually like that to link to my socials. I'd also like to get rid of this my project here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to GitHub Copilot edits once again, and I'm going to say remove the text. What was the text? My project from the nav bar, and update all of the links in the nav bar with this information. I'm just going to give it my personal information, maybe even put a link to the server side in there. I am the editor-in-chief over at theserverside.com. So if you want more information on GitHub Copilot or GitHub in general, check that out. But very, very quickly, GitHub Copilot edits is going to add all of that in. Notice it even added a new link for the server side. It's going to say, do you want to keep these? I'm going to take a look at them, and that all looks good to me. I'm going to keep those changes. I'm going to save everything, and then I'm going to come back to my project here, click refresh, and notice that the my project text is gone. It does link to the server side, it links to my YouTube, it links to my Blue Sky, and it links to my X. And I would highly recommend subscribing and follow me over on Blue Sky. It's nice to be social on social media. Of course, if we're using GitHub Copilot, what we want to do is we want to demonstrate some of its coding capabilities. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into the code here, and I'm going to add my own script tag. So I've added a little script tag. Now, inside this script tag, inside the HTML, I'm going to just add a little comment. And the comment is going to be, this method adds two numbers together. And once I do this, GitHub Copilot is going to say, hey, a method that does that probably should be declared like this. Function add a comma b, return a plus b. I'm going to click tab, and all of a sudden that method is added. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I need a method that subtracts two numbers. It'll think about it and it'll say, hey, okay, here's your subtract method. And now all of a sudden I've got an add and subtract method added to my application. What do I want to do next? Well, maybe I can go over to GitHub Copilot edits. Let me take a look at my landing page here. There's my project. I'm going to say remove the text in the body that says, and what does it say? It says hello world, and replace it with a simple calculator application that calls the add and subtract methods in the index.html file, and make it look like a simple classic grade school calculator. Okay, and let's see what GitHub Copilot edits does with this. Let's see if I can figure out how to create a page that will call these methods that, well, it actually added after I just prompted it with a couple of simple comments. It is done. Now, you never know what you're going to get. It's worth taking a look through all the code, do a little file, save all, come back to my project and click refresh. And I don't know, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but it's a good start. Enter the number, so the number 1, what's the second number? 2, we can add them. The result is 3, we can subtract them. -1, you know what, this is all looking pretty darn good. So it's not quite the calculator that I wanted, but maybe if I go back here and say, update the GUI for the calculator and make it look like a classic calculator with a button for each number and each of the basic math operations. Let's see what happens when we give it that type of an instruction. Okay, I am seeing a lot of divs. I'm seeing a lot of buttons. So this makes me think that we are much closer to the classic calculator that I wanted. I'm going to do a file, save all. Then I'm going to come back to this file, do a little refresh. And wow, look at that. 5 plus 2 equals 7. This is looking very, very good. A nice, handsome calculator application. Maybe we can add a multiplication and division. But hey, we'll develop things one step at a time. Impressed by Copilot? Yeah, there's a bunch of cool things that you can do with the tool. One of the cool things you can do is you can actually have it fix your code. So I'm going to break my code for a little bit. I'm going to say that add is A times B and subtract is A divided by B. Okay, so that is definitely some messed up code. I'm going to click Control S and save those changes. Now, the cool thing you can do, you can highlight a piece of code or make sure a particular file is focused on, and you say workspace and /fix. Now let's see if we can figure out that add should be a plus and subtract should be a minus. So indeed, it says fix the add and subtract methods to correctly perform addition and subtraction instead of multiplication and division. And it shows us what it's going to delete from the code, and it shows us what it's going to add. I'm going to say keep. I'll click File, Save, and indeed, it has now corrected our code, and the add and subtract methods are indeed running properly. We all know testing is an important part of software development, and the ability to help you out with tests is one of the greatest features of GitHub Copilot. Now, what I want to do is I want to extract these two methods into a separate file to make it easier for testing. So I'm going to ask GitHub Copilot Edits to do just that. Extract the add and subtract methods into their own file named calculator.js so that it is easier to test these methods. Let's see how GitHub Copilot Edits does. And so there we go. It says it's going to remove these files. That's all of the red ink, and I can see calculator.js at the top. I'm going to say keep to all of those changes, do a file, save all, and now I've got that code factored out into a separate method. Now the question is, does the code still work? So what's 9 minus 3? That is 6. So it looks like everything is still working, even though it is factored that out. So what do we want to do next? Well, I want to start testing all of this code, but I don't have a testing framework set up. So what you do is just say workspace, set up tests, and all of a sudden GitHub Copilot says, hey, we are going to set up some testing for you. Create a new calculator.test to set up tests and add the subtract methods. Update calculator.js. Do we want to keep all of these changes? Yes. Okay, looks very, very good. Now, I don't think these particular methods, specifically add and subtract, have been exported. Oh, module exports, that has been done as well. So it actually looks like all of the code has been added here. Now, do we have a testing framework, or are these just simple tests? I don't know how to run this. I'm not big at tests. I've only been working in the software industry for 20 years. I don't know anything about testing. So why don't we ask the tool how to run these tests? And so I'll go to GitHub Copilot Chat and I'll say, how do we run these tests? I'll highlight the test there just to give it a little bit of indication of what I'm talking about. So it says it looks like you were using Jest for your test. Let's make sure Jest is set up in your workspace. So it says first, ensure that Jest is installed in your project. Now, if you're in Chat, you will often get commands that will be run in the terminal window. And if you click on that little icon there, it'll open up the terminal window with the command installed in it. So I'll say npm install save dev jest. And then once that's done, I'll have to add this to the package.json file. So I'll open up package.json and add that in. And there we go, scripts test. Now that looks really good. It says your file tree structure should look like this once this is done. So I'll click apply all of those changes. Now is this going to work? As I said, I've never tested a method before. So it does say do npm test. I'm going to click enter here. It runs the suite of tests and it says, indeed, it worked. We had one test suite with 2 tests in it, and all of them seem to pass. So there we go. Now we're actually having GitHub Copilot not only set up the testing framework for us, but it's also added a couple of tests to our code. And then with a simple npm test, it'll actually run the Jest testing framework for us and test our application to make sure that it's working properly. And there you go. That's the ins and outs of GitHub Copilot. I don't want to belabor the point any longer. I think we covered all of the main features. If you want to learn more tips and tricks, sign up for my newsletter. There is a link in the description below. Got lots of articles on Git, GitHub Desktop, GitHub Pages, GitHub in general. Over on the server side, I am the editor-in-chief over there. And if you did like this video, well, like it, subscribe, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you.